Look at this piece of wood. It was driven into the soil of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in 1887. That was during the presidency of Grover Cleveland. 137 years later, it is still here. It hasn't turned to gray dust. It hasn't crumbled into a nest for termites. If you try to press your thumbnail into the grain, the wood fights back. It is still dense. It still carries the faint, stubborn scent of ancient pine resin. Now, look at the deck in your backyard, or the fence you just paid $5,000 to install. Most modern pressure-treated lumber is lucky to last 10 years before the rot sets in. We are told this is just the way nature works. We are told that wood is temporary. But that might be one of the most expensive lies you have ever bought. The $15 billion wood processing industry relies on your wood failing. If your fence lasted a century, they would go out of business. So they sell you a cycle of decay. Think about your Saturdays. The average homeowner may spend over 2,000 hours of their life maintaining wood. That is 2,000 hours of scraping, staining, and breeding in chemicals. That is time taken away from your family. It is a stolen summer that repeats every 3 years. And it is all because a simple $2 formula was buried. Old Mennonite records from the 19th century describe a process that makes wood nearly immortal. Some researchers believe these methods were intentionally scrubbed from modern construction textbooks. One theory suggests the industry could not find a way to patent a recipe this cheap. But why would a formula that costs less than a cup of coffee be seen as a threat? Why would the biggest construction corporations in the world want it gone? The answer starts with a secret that has been hiding in plain sight since the time of the Vikings. Before 1940, when a person built a barn, they were building for the next century. Wood was seen as a permanent asset, but right around 1943, the philosophy changed. Some historians argue that this was the moment wood became a subscription service. The industry realized that if a fence lasted forever, you only bought it once. To keep the money flowing, the wood had to die. Before this shift, lumber was air-dried. It sat under the sun for months, allowing the fibers to toughen naturally. It was a slow, patient process. Then came the industrial kilns. By blast heating the wood to speed up production, the internal cell structure often shattered. The wood looked fine on the outside, but it was essentially wounded. To fix this, they started using chemical pressure treatments. You have seen that green-tinted wood at the hardware store? It looks protected, doesn't it? Here is the catch. Modern chemicals usually only penetrate about 1/8 of an inch into the surface. It creates a thin, toxic skin. Inside that skin, the wood is often still raw and vulnerable. The moment a nail or a screw pierces that 1/8 of an inch, the seal is broken. The wood begins to rot from the inside out, while the surface looks perfectly fine. It is a brilliant, if perhaps accidental, design for failure. As the wood fails faster, the revenue for chemical companies climbs higher. You can't patent a pine tree, but you can patent the poison you spray on it. I recently found a weathered agricultural manual from 1912. It was tucked away in a basement in Lancaster County. The notes scribbled in the margins of that book tell a very different story. They describe a method so simple, it feels like a prank. If this secret got out today, some believe the big box retailers would lose billions. And it all starts with a substance the Vikings used to conquer the sea. To understand why those old methods work, we have to look at the wood's own biology. Under a microscope, a piece of lumber isn't just a solid block. It is a complex highway of straw-like tubes held together by a natural glue called lignin. If you lose the lignin, the wood turns into dust. When you see a modern fence turning that sad, ghostly gray, you are looking at a molecular battlefield. Sunlight acts like a microscopic hammer, shattering the chemical bonds of that natural glue. Researchers note that once those bonds break, the wood fibers become loose and vulnerable. This is where the old world chemistry steps in. Some scholars believe the Amish and their predecessors weren't just painting the wood, they were actually reinforcing its internal immune system. One key component found in traditional pine tar is a substance called abediic acid. In a living tree, this acid may act as a powerful antimicrobial shield. When applied to a fence or a barn, some experts argue it continues to fight off the fungi that cause rot. It is essentially a natural antibiotic for your porch. But the real secret lies in how this formula handles breathing. Most modern paints and sealers act like a plastic bag wrapped around the wood. They trap moisture inside. One theory suggests this causes the wood to literally suffocate and stew in its own juices. The Amish method, however, creates what some call a one-way valve. It allows internal moisture to evaporate out as a gas, but its molecular structure is often too tight for liquid water to seep back in. Think of it like high-end athletic gear for your house. It breathes, it moves, and it never cracks under pressure. While modern coatings are brittle and destined to flake, this bond may actually get tougher as it ages. But here is the part that might frustrate you. One of the three main ingredients in this immortal mixture is likely sitting in your garage right now. You have probably walked past it 100 times, thinking it was just a useless leftover. The recipe isn't a complex chemical soup. It is a trinity of materials that some believe creates a biological fortress. The first is kiln-burned pine tar. Look, this isn't the black sludge used for roofing. It is the golden brown sap of the tree itself, concentrated by fire. The second is raw linseed oil. A quick warning here, do not use the boiled variety found at the hardware store. Boiled oil often contains heavy metal dryers to speed up the clock. Raw oil is patient. It stays liquid longer, which researchers suggest allows it to soak deeper into the wood's thirsty cells. The third ingredient is gum turpentine. This is the engine of the formula. It acts as a carrier, thinning the thick oils so they can travel. Think of it as a delivery truck. It carries the protection deep into the heart of the timber, and then it simply vanishes. It evaporates into the air, leaving the armor behind. But the old manuals mention a fourth ingredient that the modern industry almost never discusses: a pinch of common borax. When dissolved into the mix, it serves as a silent sentry against termites and carpenter ants. The math is beautiful in its simplicity. For old, dry wood that looks like it's gasping for air, use the 1:1:1 ratio, equal parts of all three. If you are working with fresh lumber, some craftsmen suggest a heavier lean: 2 parts oil, 1 part tar, and 1 part turpentine. It creates a lighter, more flexible shield for wood that is still settling. You might be tempted to just grab a bucket and start mixing right now. Stop. If you just stir them together at room temperature, you are essentially wasting your time. There is a specific ritual involving heat that changes the molecular weight of the liquid. Without it, the formula may just sit on the surface like a cheap coat of paint. And the temperature you need? Well, it's probably not what you think. Think of a piece of wood not as a solid block, but as a dense bundle of microscopic straws. These straws are often clogged with old resin, dust, and trapped air. If you just slap cold oil on top, it may just sit there like honey on a marble floor. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. They apply the treatment on a cool, cloudy day or straight out of a cold bucket. Some researchers suggest this is why modern stains fail so quickly. Many commercial products are what experts call film-forming stains. They create a thin, plastic-like shell over the surface. One theory is that this shell acts like a tiny greenhouse for bacteria. It traps moisture inside the wood, letting the rot feast in the dark. The old world secret to avoiding this isn't just the ingredients, it is the heat. You see, when you warm that oil mixture to about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the magic happens. The molecules move faster, and the liquid becomes thin, almost like water. Some craftsmen believe this allows the oil to dive deep into those microscopic straws. This process is driven by something called capillary action. When the wood is warm, the pores are essentially open and ready to drink. One technique is to apply the mix in the heat of a high noon sun. As the wood cools in the evening, it may actually suck the oil deeper into its core. It is a physical pull that a cold application can never achieve. If you test this, the difference is striking. Water dropped on cold-treated wood might eventually soak in through the cracks, but on wood treated with the heat method, the water just dances on the surface. It can't find a way in because the cells are already full of protection. Now, you might be looking at your own deck right now and thinking it's too late. Maybe the boards are already gray, weathered, and starting to split. Well, don't give up on them just yet. I found a piece of lumber in my neighbor's trash that looked like it was ready for the landfill. It was bone dry and silvered by years of neglect. Wait until you see what happens when the heat hits the grain. Let's look at the math, because the numbers are, well, they are staggering. Over a 30-year span, one estimate suggests the average homeowner spends $15,000 on deck replacements and sealants. Think about that for a second. $15,000. That is the price of a luxury SUV or a significant chunk of a child's college fund. And you are handing it over, $150 at a time. A single bucket of high-end commercial stain often costs that much. The labels tell you to reapply it every 2 years, but we have all seen the truth. By the second spring, the finish is often already cracking and peeling. Now, compare that to the old world way. The raw ingredients for a pine tar mix can cost as little as $2 per treatment. Some craftsmen find that because it soaks so deep, you may only need to touch it up every 5 years. You are not just saving money, you are buying back your time. Instead of scraping and power washing every other summer, you are actually living your life. There is also the matter of your home's value. A stained deck often looks weathered and worn after a single hard winter, but wood treated with natural oils develops what many call a rich silver patina. It is a look of age and strength. Some real estate experts believe this timeless appearance can actually increase the appeal of a property. It suggests a home that was built to last centuries, not just decades. But the industry does not want you thinking about the long game. They want you on the chemical treadmill. And it turns out there is a much darker reason they want you using those synthetic cans. It may not just be your wallet they are draining. One theory suggests these chemicals are doing something much worse. They might be poisoning the very soil in your garden. Think about your backyard for a moment. Picture your kids playing on the grass or your dog napping in the shade of the deck. Now imagine what happens during a heavy summer rain. Every time water hits those chemically treated boards, it may be washing a toxic cocktail into your soil. Modern wood treatments often rely on powerful biocides to kill off fungus and mold. Some researchers suspect these chemicals don't just stay inside the wood. They could be leaching into the very ground where your family spends their time. Compare that to the way the Vikings handled the elements. They used pine tar to seal their massive longships against the freezing North Atlantic. History suggests they even used this same natural resin to seal their drinking vessels. It was safe enough to touch their water, yet strong enough to survive the ocean. In Norway, there are wooden stave churches that have stood for over 800 years. One theory for their incredible survival is the repeated application of this natural pine blood. It doesn't fight nature with poison. It mimics the tree's own immune system to keep the rot at bay. When you open a typical can of modern deck stain, you are often hit by a sharp chemical wall. Those are VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. Some health advocates argue that breathing these fumes during application may lead to long-term respiratory issues. The old world formula is different. It smells like a campfire in a deep forest. It is a preservative that works with the environment rather than trying to sanitize it with toxins. If this natural method is safe enough for the Vikings and strong enough for an 800-year-old church, well, it raises a very uncomfortable question. Why is it that you can't find a single pre-mixed bottle of it at a big box hardware store? The reason you can't find this mixture on a shelf is actually quite simple. You cannot patent a tree. Wall Street generally hates products that anyone can make in their own backyard. If a chemical company can't own the molecular formula, they can't protect their profits for 20 years. Natural pine tar and linseed oil are what some call open source materials. They belong to everyone, which means they belong to no one's bottom line. There is a massive economic incentive to keep you on what some call the maintenance treadmill. One theory suggests that the same parent companies often own both the lumber mills and the stain manufacturers. It is a perfect loop of profit. They sell you the wood that rots, and then they sell you the chemical that fails to save it. If you use a formula that lasts for decades, you stop being a customer. To a $15 billion industry, a self-sufficient homeowner is a direct threat. Some industry critics argue that building codes have been quietly influenced over the years.
They suggest that lobbyists may have pushed for standards that favor synthetic, branded products over traditional methods. It makes the old ways look like amateur work, even if they outlast the modern stuff. They want you to see a glossy logo and a 500% markup. They don't want you to see the raw, simple power of nature. Because once you see it, the illusion of the big box store starts to crumble. You are no longer just a consumer waiting for a sale.
You are someone with a secret that the industry has spent 30 years trying to bury. And the best part is, you do not need their permission to use it. I am going to show you exactly what to look for. I have a specific list of ingredients that you can pick up without ever stepping foot in a major retail chain. It is time to stop being a customer and start being a threat. Before you mix a single drop, you have to make sure the wood is actually ready to drink. If your lumber is soaking wet from a rainstorm, this recipe will not work. Most pros suggest a moisture level of 15% or lower. You can check this with a cheap meter or just drop a bit of water on the surface. If the water beads up, the wood is still sealed or too wet. But if that water vanishes into the grain, you are ready to begin. If you have old peeling paint, you have to get it off first. This mixture needs to reach the actual fibers, not just sit on a plastic film. One theory suggests the Amish saturation method works best because it floods the wood rather than just painting it. Now, here is the secret to the application. It is called the wet-on-wet technique. You apply the first coat, wait about 20 minutes, and then hit it again while it is still tacky. This could help create a continuous bond deep inside the timber. Do not just focus on the flat parts of the board. You need to drown the end grain, those cut ends where the straw-like fibers are exposed. Some researchers argue that 90% of all wood rot starts right there at the tips. It is the Achilles heel of every structure you build. Flood the nail holes in the joints until they simply cannot take any more. The wood will look dark at first. It might even look a little scary, like you have ruined the whole project, but you have to trust the process. Give it time to breathe. Wait 3 weeks for the sun and air to do their work, because what happens next is where the magic really starts to show. Think about your grandchildren. Imagine them standing on this same deck 100 years from today. They might run their hands over the grain and wonder how it survived so long. Some believe that by choosing this path, you are not just saving a few boards, you are reclaiming the time and the money the industry tried to take from you. That is the real victory here. The big chemical companies want you to keep replacing and keep buying, but the old ways, they want you to endure. One theory suggests that the simplest solutions are the hardest for a corporation to kill. You are no longer just a consumer. You have become a steward of something that actually lasts. You have traded a $15,000 headache for a $2 secret. If you know someone about to spend their entire summer budget at a big box store, send them this. Help them step off the maintenance treadmill for good. Let them know there is a better way. Now, look at your home. Find the oldest piece of wood you own and tell me in the comments when it was installed. I want to know exactly how long they have been lying to you. In a world of planned obsolescence, choose to build a legacy. Choose to build something that outlives the lies. Because in the end, simple always wins.